exfiltrating your data bit by bit.
Hey, Mike, I'm excited to hear what you have for us today.
It's no secret that, for some time now, attackers have been looking for new ways to live off the land, right? That way they were able to, go into an environment and have less of an opportunity for the, defenders of that environment to be able to identify them. And there was a great story that came out about a new, quote-unquote, piece of malware that is leveraging the BITS service in the Windows platform, which is the Background Intelligent Transfer Service, as part of their technique for gaining access and, exploiting an environment. So the BITS service, as it is known, was introduced in Windows XP, and it's used for doing asynchronous file transfers and background process updates. So things like, updating programs, downloading files, things like that happen in the background. And it does this dynamically using unallocated or unused network time. So if the user isn't using the computer, it will use those free cycles and that free network bandwidth to do those file transfers in the back end, making it really transparent from a user perspective, right? Very non-impactful. So this new malware, which was actually written in 2015, is called Win32 Stealth Falcon, and this is being attributed to a threat actor group out of the Middle East that is predominantly targeting journalists, activists, dissidents, other types of anti-government kinds of individuals and organizations in order to backdoor their systems and gain intelligence and details about what they're reporting on, and then possibly, using that information to take secondary action. What this application does, once it's on to the endpoint, which I don't believe people are really certain about how that initial infection takes place, but it is a backdoor program that can be used to then cull through data and package that data for exfiltration. And what it does is it encrypts a copy of the data that they want to take, and then it uses the BITS process to talk to command and control infrastructure as well as to exfiltrate those files. And then once it has done that, it will actually overwrite the log files as well as the data that it exfiltrated with random data, and then delete those encrypted files to make them very, very difficult to recover or analyze with forensics purposes.
Generally, we see malware doing like their own custom C2 channel or command and control, like they'll connect to a website or something like that, or DNS. But this time, using the BITS component for transferring data, I think that's unusual or something that hasn't been seen before. It kind of blends into the system, and that's something that advanced adversaries really love because it's part of the system. They don't have to do anything custom. It might even look like a normal part of what the operating system does on a day-to-day basis.
The tool can also be used to then deploy secondary payloads and additional malicious tools on the endpoints. And this is interesting because of that use of that BITS service, right? It's very difficult to identify abuse cases of that service. It's very likely that host-based firewall type technologies are going to allow that communication in and out of the host without really interrogating it too terribly thoroughly, because it's sort of a known process and it's a trusted process. So while antivirus packages are doing a better job of looking for that kind of thing in the past couple of years, it's still something that has been exploited by other malware programs. We should expect to see this exploited by other future malware programs. And so it's something that we're going to want to keep an eye on and make sure that the endpoint protections are definitely updated to address that. On the upside, even if you're unable to catch the abuse of the BITS service, anytime the malware takes action on the machine and starts to modify registry keys or touch, protected files or things like that, any of your endpoint security solutions should be able to identify that type of malicious activity and alert you to its presence.
Yeah, that's interesting. It reminds me of something old becomes something new. So bad guys probably use like DLL order hijacking frequently to insert like malicious DLLs into legitimate looking processes. So when you're first starting out, I know like as a malware analyst, you have to first of all like learn what is normal and where do you get these DLLs. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's interesting to see that the bit service is abused. Now, do you know if it's just they're running under the bits umbrella, so to speak, or is it they're somehow using the communication protocol of bits as well to exfiltrate the data?
I don't believe they're using the bits process as like an umbrella process. They're using it as a data transfer mechanism. So rather than trying to use HTTP or HTTPS or tunnel it out via DNS traffic or something like that, all of which are very common techniques that we've seen, they're using that bits service as that data transfer mechanism.
Well, it's not the first time that we've seen bits be used for nefarious purposes. So I agree with you, Mike. I don't think it's going to be the last.
What's interesting is that this particular technique, you're seeing it being used both in the state-sponsored threat actor groups, and it's also made its way into the non-espionage or non-state-sponsored threat actor groups as well. So again, it's kind of another interesting example of something that may have originated as a state-sponsored technique that has now made its way into kind of more of the criminal underground side of things, and seeing that technique proliferate kind of more broadly across the cybersecurity space.
This is definitely one to put in our like security defense playbook as well. One more area to look for things during forensics. Things like this just always remind me of just like these big things that adversaries do, like WMI persistence. For a while, like everybody knew what kind of persistence mechanisms there were on a Windows machine, and WMI persistence was talked about a lot. And so this sounds like just another C2 channel that the bad guys will be able to employ, and we just have to be on the lookout for it. Great story, Mike.
Make sure your endpoint software is up to date. So if you've got any AV running, Windows Defender, things like that, you're going to want to make sure that they are up to date, because that would be your best bet in detecting this. The whole point of bits is that it does its thing in the background when you're not using your computer. It's sort of there when your computer's not active. So it's going to be really difficult for you to notice anything is going on with your computer, because it's only running when you're not using it. So you're going to want to rely on antivirus software or Windows Defender to make sure that your computer isn't suffering from any sort of bits vulnerabilities.